was just after midnight when Sam's car began sputtering. He glanced nervously at the gas gauge. It was almost empty. He cursed under his breath. Why hadn't he stopped at the last town to fill up? Now he was in the middle of nowhere, on a long, empty road. There were no streetlights, no cars, and no signs of life. Sam fumbled for his phone to check the map, but his signal was gone. Great, he thought. He was completely alone in the dark. Finally, as if by some miracle, he saw the faint glow of a sign in the distance. A gas station. Relief flooded through him. Sam pressed the gas pedal just hard enough to make it there before the car gave up. The sign read, "Gas open 24 hours" in flickering red letters. The gas station looked old. The paint was peeling off the walls and the lights overhead flickered. The parking lot was empty except for an ancient truck with a rusty bed. Sam parked his car by the pump and got out. The cold air made him shiver, and everything was too quiet. No sound of crickets, no wind, nothing. It was like the world had gone silent. Sam looked around, hoping to see someone working inside. The small building had one light on, but the windows were filthy. He squinted, trying to see movement, but it was hard to tell. He walked to the door and pushed it open. A bell above the door jingled, and Sam froze. The sound echoed loudly, as if the place was completely empty. Inside, the gas station was worse than it looked from the outside. Shelves with snacks were dusty and half empty. The smell of stale air mixed with something else, something rotting. Sam wrinkled his nose. "Hello?" he called. His voice bounced off the walls. "Anyone here?" No answer. Sam sighed and walked to the counter. A little bell sat there and he tapped it twice. Ding, ding. The sharp noise was the only sound. "Come on," he muttered. "I just need gas." He felt someone watching him and it made his skin crawl. Slowly, Sam turned around and looked toward the back of the store. In the far corner, next to the cooler with broken glass doors, stood a man. At least Sam thought it was a man. The figure was tall and thin, too thin, almost like he was stretched. His skin was pale and his eyes were wide open, staring at Sam without blinking. He wore dirty overalls and a grimy cap pulled low over his forehead. He didn't move or say a word. Sam swallowed hard. Hey, you work here?" The figure didn't answer. He just stood there, staring. Sam's heart started to race. He looked at the figure for a moment longer, then turned back to the counter. He tapped the bell again, more urgently this time. "Hey man, I'm in a hurry. I just need to pay for some gas," Sam said louder. He glanced back, but the figure was gone. Sam blinked. He scanned the room, but the man had completely disappeared. What the? Sam rubbed his arms to fight off the chill that had settled over him. "Forget this," he muttered. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $20 bill, and slapped it on the counter. "That's enough for gas. Keep." Sam hurried out of the gas station. The cold air hit him again, but he was glad to be outside. He walked quickly to his car, looking over his shoulder. The place was creeping him out. He grabbed the gas pump, but when he tried to use it, the machine wouldn't turn on. Sam slammed the nozzle back into its holder and ran back to the station. Inside, the lights were flickering worse than before. "Seriously?" Sam said aloud. He stepped back inside, his shoes squeaking on the grimy floor. "Hello? Anyone here? Your pumps aren't working." From behind the counter came a sound. It was faint at first, like someone breathing heavily. Sam froze, and his eyes darted toward the noise. Slowly, he stepped around the counter. At first, he thought it was a person sitting there, but as he looked closer, he realized it was something else. A body was crumpled on the floor. The skin was gray and wrinkled like it had been dead for weeks, but its chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. The face was distorted, its mouth stretched open into a wide, unnatural grin. Its eyes were rolled back, showing only white. Flies buzzed around its face. Sam stumbled back, clapping a hand over his mouth to stop himself from screaming. His foot hit something. He turned to see a gas can. empty and stained with red. Sam's head was spinning. He didn't know what he was seeing, but he had to get out. He bolted back toward the door. The bell above jingled again as he rushed outside, but this time the sound echoed much longer. Ding, 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 like it was following him. Sam sprinted to his car. He jumped inside and locked the doors. He fumbled with the keys, shaking as he tried to start the engine. It sputtered but wouldn't turn on. "Come on, come on, come on," he shouted. Something moved outside. Sam looked up, and his blood turned to ice. The man from earlier, the tall, thin man, was standing by the gas pump. But he was closer now. His head was tilted at an impossible angle, and his wide eyes were fixed on Sam's car. His grin stretched from ear to ear, revealing rows of jagged yellow teeth. Sam's hand hit the door lock again, just to be sure. He turned the key, and finally, the engine roared to life. Sam hit the gas, but the car lurched forward only a few feet before the engine died again. Sam's heart pounded as he looked back at the gas pump. The tall man was gone. He looked frantically out each window, trying to spot him. The silence was deafening. The only sound was his own heavy breathing. Then, slowly, a shadow fell over the windshield. Sam's eyes snapped forward. The man was standing directly in front of the car now, staring down at him through the glass. He placed both of his long, bony hands on the hood. His grin grew wider. His head started to tilt back and forth like a broken doll. Sam screamed and slammed his fist against the steering wheel. "Leave me alone!" The man didn't move. His eyes were wide and unblinking. Suddenly, a loud bang sounded on the passenger window. Sam whipped his head to the side and saw a face pressed against the glass. It was the same as the body he'd seen inside, gray, with a stretched mouth and blank eyes. Another bang came from the driver's side. More figures were appearing, each one dead and twisted, banging on the car windows. Their grins stretched wider and wider, teeth clicking as they grinned at him. Sam was surrounded. His hands shook as he grabbed the key and twisted it again. The engine sputtered. The figures outside started laughing, a raspy, wet sound that made Sam's stomach turn. "Come on!" Sam screamed. He turned the key one last time, and the engine roared to life. Without thinking, he slammed his foot on the gas pedal. The car shot forward. The man on the hood rolled off, his body hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. The figures around the car screeched as Sam sped out of the gas station lot and onto the dark road. He didn't look back. He couldn't. For miles, Sam drove in silence. His hands gripped the wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see those figures following him. But the road was empty. Finally, the glow of a small town appeared in the distance. Sam drove straight to a diner and parked. He stumbled out of the car and into the brightly lit building. A waitress behind the counter looked up and smiled. "You okay, hun?" she asked. Sam collapsed into a booth, his heart still racing. I need a phone, please." The waitress handed him her phone. Sam called for help, trying to explain what happened. The person on the other end told him to stay put and they'd send someone. When he hung up, the waitress poured him a cup of coffee. "Where you coming from?" she asked. Sam swallowed hard. "Some gas station back on Route 6. The waitress froze, her smile fading. "Route 6? Yeah, the one with the old sign, gas open hours." The waitress's face turned pale. She leaned closer. "That place burned down 20 years ago. Ain't nobody there." Sam's blood ran cold. "No, I was just there. I saw." "You didn't see anything, hun," the waitress said quickly, her voice low. "Forget about it. That road isn't for folks like us." Sam didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the grinning faces and heard their laughter. Some roads are better left alone. Some gas stations are better left forgotten. But Sam would never forget. And no matter how far he drove, he always felt like he was being watched. Somewhere out there, on a dark stretch of road, the gas station was still waiting. And so were they. The next morning, the sun shone bright and warm, but it brought no comfort to Sam. He sat alone in the diner booth, staring at his untouched coffee. He hadn't slept. His mind kept playing that awful night over and over, the twisted faces, the sharp grins, the silence broken only by those chilling laughs. The waitress passed by again, but this time she only gave him a concerned glance. Sam didn't blame her. He must have looked like a wreck, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes disheveled, his hands still trembling. Finally, Sam got up. He left a few crumpled bills on the table and stepped outside into the clear morning air. His car sat in the parking lot, streaked with dirt and scratches. Sam hesitated. For a moment, he thought he saw handprints on the windows, long, bony prints. But when he blinked, they were gone. "You're just tired," he told himself. "You're imagining things." Sam needed to get out of here. He didn't know where he was headed, but anywhere would be better than this town near that road. He got into his car and drove. The soft hum of the engine and the wide-open sky should have been comforting, but Sam still couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Every now and then, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Sure, he'd see one of those figures, tall, thin, and grinning, lurking behind him. The drive stretched on. Miles passed, the towns becoming smaller and farther apart. Soon, Sam realized he was back on another lonely road surrounded by woods, just like before. He cursed under his breath. "How did I get back here?" he whispered. Sam pulled over and grabbed his phone. Still no signal. As he looked out the window, he froze. In the distance, just barely visible through the trees, he saw it again. The flickering red letters. Gas open 24 hours. Sam's chest tightened. No, that can't be here. His hands gripped the steering wheel. He knew he couldn't be seeing that gas station. He'd driven for hours. It wasn't possible. And yet, there it was. That same flickering sign. The small building, the rusty truck. He sat there, paralyzed, unsure of what to do. He didn't want to get out of the car, but he couldn't stay here either. It was almost as if the road had tricked him, led him back to this nightmare on purpose. As Sam debated his next move, something caught his eye in the side mirror. It was small at first, a shadow near the trees, but it moved closer. Sam squinted, his stomach churning. There they were. The figures. 3 of them stood at the edge of the woods, watching him. Their heads were tilted awkwardly, their wide grins flashing in the sunlight. Sam couldn't see their eyes, but he felt them staring straight at him. Panicking, Sam turned the key, and the engine roared. "I'm not doing this again." He hit the gas pedal, peeling back onto the road. The figures didn't chase him. They didn't need to. He could feel them following, not physically, but they were there. In his mind. In the air. The road twisted on, and Sam just kept driving, faster and faster, even though he wasn't sure where it would take him. The gas station sign grew smaller in the mirror until it disappeared altogether. Sam finally let out a shaky breath. "I'm fine," he said to no one but himself. "They're gone." By evening, Sam had made it to another town. This one had people, real people, walking the streets, laughing, and going about their day. Sam parked outside a small motel and paid for a room. He was exhausted. More than anything, he needed sleep. The room was small and dingy, but it felt safe enough. Sam locked the door, closed the curtains, and dropped onto the bed, not even bothering to undress. He was asleep almost instantly. For a while, the dreams were peaceful, dark, dreamless sleep that gave him the escape he needed. Then the noise started. Sam's eyes shot open. At first, he wasn't sure he had really heard it, but then it came again, soft knocking. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the window. Sam sat up, his heart pounding. The curtains were drawn, but the knocking continued, soft and steady. Tap, tap, tap. Sam forced himself to his feet. "It's just a branch," he muttered, "or a kid playing a prank." But deep down, he already knew. He knew something was wrong. Shaking, he grabbed the edge of the curtain. Slowly, he pulled it open. Sam's heart stopped. Standing outside the window was one of the figures. Its face was pressed against the glass, mouth twisted into that horrible grin. Its empty white eyes stared into Sam's soul. Then, slowly, it raised one bony hand and knocked again. Tap, tap, tap. Sam stumbled back, tripping over his feet. The knocking grew louder. More figures appeared, one by one, their twisted grins and pale faces filling the window. Their hands slapped against the glass. Bang, bang, bang. The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in around him as the knocking became louder, harder, like they were trying to break through. Sam grabbed his bag and bolted for the door. He didn't care that he was in his socks. He didn't care where he went. He just needed to get away. He ran to his car and jumped in. As he fumbled for the keys, he made the mistake of looking up. The figures were there, scattered across the parking lot. They stood silently, watching, smiling. Sam's hands were shaking so badly that it took him 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. The car roared to life, and he didn't waste a second. He hit the gas pedal, peeling out of the lot and speeding down the road. "Where am I supposed to go?" Sam screamed into the empty car. The road stretched ahead of him, twisting and dark. Sam knew deep down there was no escaping it. No matter where he went, they would find him. That gas station, the awful figures, it was a part of him now. The road always led him back. The longer he drove, the less real the world around him felt. The lights grew dimmer, the sky darker. Finally, up ahead, Sam saw what he had feared most. It wasn't surprising. It wasn't even shocking. It was just inevitable. The gas station. The flickering red letters called to him like a beacon. Gas open 24 hours. Sam stopped the car. He sat there, staring at the building. For a moment, he thought about turning around, driving off into the woods maybe, or just letting the car run until it died. But what was the point? Slowly, Sam opened the door and stepped out. The cold air bit at his skin. The road behind him was gone now, swallowed by the dark. The figures were waiting for him. They stood by the gas pumps and along the edges of the lot. Dozens of them, their heads tilted, their grins impossibly wide. Sam's footsteps crunched on the gravel as he walked toward the gas station door. The familiar bell jingled as he stepped inside. The room was just as it had been before, dusty, empty, silent. This time, Sam didn't call for help. He didn't look around. He knew what was waiting. At the back of the store, behind the broken cooler, stood the tall man. He was smiling, the same jagged teeth flashing in the dim light. Sam met his gaze. There was nowhere else to go. The man tilted his head, raised one hand, and pointed behind Sam. Sam turned slowly. At the center of the gas station, where nothing had been before, there was now a door. A tall, dark door that pulsed, as though it was breathing. The figures were gathering around it, waiting. Their laughter, low, raspy, and awful, filled Sam's ears. Sam didn't resist. He didn't scream. He just walked forward through the door and into the dark. Outside, the gas station sign flickered once more. Gas open 24 hours. Then it went out. The black door swallowed Sam whole. When he stepped through, it felt like he had left the world behind. Everything went silent. The air was thick and heavy, like it was pressing against his chest. There was no light, no sign of the gas station, no sky, no ground beneath his feet, yet somehow he was moving. With each step forward, faint whispers began to trickle through the darkness. They came from everywhere and nowhere, rising and falling like waves. "Sam, Sam, why are you here?" The voices echoed in a strange, unnatural harmony. Sam gritted his teeth, clamping his hands over his ears, but it was no use. The whispers sank into his skull. "You were chosen." He stopped. "Chosen? What are you talking about? Who are you?" Sam's voice seemed small and weak here, and the whispers didn't answer. Instead, the darkness shifted. Ahead of him, faint lights blinked into existence, one at a time. They stretched far into the distance, forming what looked like an endless black hallway. The lights flickered, just like the old gas station sign. Sam hesitated, but realized he had no choice but to move forward. As he walked, shapes began to emerge. figures watching him from the edges of the hallway. They didn't move. They didn't make a sound. Just like before, they stared. Sam tried not to look at them, but every time he turned his head, they seemed closer. And then he reached the end. At the far end of the hallway was something he hadn't expected, another door. This one was massive, made of ancient wood and bound with heavy iron chains. Unlike the rest of this place, it felt real. Something about it was worse than the figures, worse than the whispers. It pulsed. Each thud of the door seemed to echo like a heartbeat. "It's waiting for you." "No," Sam muttered, backing up. "I'm not opening that." The whispers turned to screams. "It's waiting. It's always been waiting." The walls around him groaned as though they were alive. Figures began stepping out from the shadows. They were closer now, close enough that Sam could see the stretched skin of their faces and hear the clicking of their teeth as they grinned. Sam spun toward the chained door. It was the only way out. His hands shook as he grabbed one of the heavy chains. The metal was ice cold against his fingers, but it pulled free surprisingly easily, as if the door had been waiting to open for him. One by one, the chains fell to the ground. He hesitated. The screams behind him grew louder. With a deep breath, he gripped the handle and pulled. The door swung open, revealing nothing. Pitch black nothing. Sam stared into it, afraid to move. But then something moved in the darkness. He didn't see it exactly. He felt it. The ground seemed to shake beneath him. He tried to close the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the very void was calling him. Before he could turn back, the figures were there, hundreds of them. They pushed Sam forward, cold, bony hands on his back, shoulders, arms. "No, stop!" Sam screamed, thrashing against them, but they wouldn't let go. They shoved him into the open doorway, and the moment his foot crossed into the void, Sam gasped awake. He sat up with a cry, clutching his chest. He was breathing hard, drenched in sweat, his heart racing like it was about to burst. He looked around and froze. He was back in his car. The sun was rising just over the horizon, casting faint rays of light onto an empty road. The gas station was gone. Sam sat there, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He turned to look over his shoulder, but the gas station wasn't there. It was as if none of it had ever happened. His car was running smoothly, the fuel gauge full. He blinked. It didn't make any sense. Sam's phone buzzed on the seat next to him. With shaking hands, he picked it up and looked at the screen. 7:06 a.m. Incoming call. The number had no name attached, just a long string of zeros. Sam hesitated but swiped to answer. "Hello?" For a moment, all he heard was silence. Then came the voice. "Did you think you could leave us?" Sam's heart stopped. "What? What do you want?" The voice laughed, a low, wet laugh that he recognized too well. "You can't leave, Sam. We're with you now. Everywhere you go, we'll be there." The phone went silent again. Sam dropped it onto the passenger seat, his hand shaking so badly he couldn't hold it. He slammed his foot on the gas pedal and sped forward, trying to put as much distance between himself and whatever this was. For weeks, Sam drove. He avoided gas stations altogether, refueling only in crowded places, surrounded by people. He stopped staying in motels and instead slept in his car, parked in busy, well-lit areas. He never drove alone at night. He never stopped anywhere quiet. But it didn't matter. Every now and then, Sam would catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. A pale face peeking from a window. A tall, thin figure watching him from the edge of the woods. Gas pumps that flickered with broken lights. Sometimes he'd hear knocking, a faint tap, tap, tap at the window when he tried to sleep. The worst were the calls. His phone rang every night at exactly 12:06 a.m., always from the same nameless number. Sam never picked up, but the voicemails were worse. They were empty at first, just static. But as the nights went on, the laughter returned. One night, Sam finally answered. "Why me?" he screamed into the phone. Why are you doing this to me?" The voice was calm, almost amused. "Because you stopped. You came to us. And now you can't leave." The line went dead. Sam threw the phone out of the car window and sped off, but the calls never stopped. Even without a phone, the sound followed him, static buzzing in his ears wherever he went. A year later, a state trooper patrolling Route 6 found an abandoned car sitting on the side of the road. The engine was still running, and the driver's door was open. Inside, the officer found a set of car keys, an empty wallet, and a phone that buzzed with an unknown number. The trooper searched the surrounding area but found no sign of the driver, just the faint, lingering smell of gasoline and a trail of footprints leading toward the woods. And then stopping. A few days later, another traveler passing through Route 6 reported a strange sight. He swore he saw a gas station where there wasn't supposed to be one, a station with flickering red lights that read "Gas open 24 hours." When asked if he went inside, the traveler shook his head, pale as a ghost. "No," he said, "I didn't stop, and I never will. Because some places don't want you to leave, and some people aren't lucky enough to escape. Wherever Sam is now, no one can say." But some still claim to see a pale, twisted figure standing alone by the pumps of a long-forgotten gas station, its grin stretching unnaturally wide in the flickering red light, waiting for the next traveler to stop. The stories of Route 6 grew over time, spreading through whispers and old diner conversations between weary travelers. The gas station, now legend, had become more than just a strange roadside tale. People said it appeared out of nowhere, usually late at night, calling to unlucky drivers desperate for fuel or sleep. Some ignored it and lived to tell the tale. Others didn't. Sam was forgotten, just another cautionary mystery. His name faded like the memories of a bad dream. Until one night. It was autumn when truck driver Nathan Banks turned onto Route 6. The road was quiet, swallowed by endless forest. A mist rolled over the cracked asphalt as his rig thundered along the winding curves. Nathan rubbed his eyes and reached for his half-empty thermos. "Man, I need a break," he muttered, yawning. His gas gauge dipped precariously close to empty, making him curse under his breath. He'd forgotten to fill up earlier, and now he was in the middle of nowhere. He glanced ahead, searching for signs of life, a gas station, a rest stop, anything. And then, like magic, he saw it. The flickering red letters stood out against the mist. "Gas open 24 hours." Nathan squinted, suddenly wary. "Where'd you come from?" The gas station looked ancient. Its broken lights buzzed faintly, barely holding on. The pumps were old-fashioned, with cracked dials and hoses that seemed older than him. The small building next to it sat in a still silence, like something out of a black-and-white photo. Nathan felt uneasy but shrugged it off. He was tired. "Ain't got much choice." He pulled into the lot and his truck hissed as it came to a stop. The moment the engine went quiet, the air changed. The world felt heavier, like he'd dipped beneath the surface of something else. Nathan stepped out of the truck, gravel crunching under his boots. The flickering sign cast a sickly red glow that stretched and bent across the cracked lot. He grabbed the gas nozzle, forcing himself to focus. "That's all it is, gas. You'll be out of here soon, big guy." His hands were unsteady as he pumped, the sound of gasoline rushing through the hose unnaturally loud in the silence. It was only then that Nathan noticed it. There was no wind. The trees, the mist, even the night air itself felt dead. A faint tap, tap, tap echoed from the glass window of the convenience store behind him. Nathan froze mid-motion. He turned his head slowly, the hose still in his hand. His mouth went dry. Standing inside the station was a figure. Its body was pressed against the inside of the glass, long, bony fingers resting against the surface. Its face. Nathan didn't know what he was looking at. Pale skin stretched too tight, eyes white and empty, as though the sockets had been scrubbed clean. Its mouth stretched open, not in a scream, but in a grotesque, broken smile. Nathan took a step back. "Hey!" he shouted, trying to sound confident, though his voice cracked. "You okay in there?" The figure didn't move, it just watched. Its fingers lifted slightly, faint tapping at the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Nathan looked back at his truck. The doors were still open. It wasn't too late to leave. He turned on his heel, making a break for it, but the door of the station opened behind him with a loud creak. It was the kind of sound that pulled at your primal instincts, the kind you know you shouldn't turn around for. But Nathan couldn't stop himself. Slowly, against his better judgment, he turned. The figure was standing in the open doorway. Its smile had widened, splitting its face almost ear to ear. It lifted a pale, shaking hand and pointed behind him. Nathan's eyes darted back to his truck, just in time to see movement. His heart dropped. Inside the cab, through the foggy windshield, he saw it. Sitting in the driver's seat was another figure, but this one was familiar, too familiar. Nathan stumbled back in horror, his breath coming in quick, ragged bursts. The figure behind the wheel looked just like him. Same coat, same hat, same blank face, except for the smile. "No, no, no," Nathan yelled. The truck's engine roared to life. It shuddered and pulled out of the lot, leaving him standing there, staring as its taillights disappeared into the fog. He was alone, or so he thought. From behind him, Nathan felt something move. He turned around and saw that he wasn't alone anymore. Standing there, filling the gas station lot, were dozens of figures. Thin and unnatural, each one stood perfectly still, their faces locked in that same terrifying smile. They surrounded him, unmoving, just watching. Nathan's legs wouldn't cooperate. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his body froze. Then, a sound rose up among them. Laughter, low and guttural. It bubbled up from the dark, like it was pouring out of the air itself. Nathan clapped his hands to his ears, screaming as the laughter grew louder and louder, until all he could hear was that horrible rattling noise. And then, nothing. Days later, Nathan's truck was found several towns away, abandoned but unharmed. The engine was running, and the fuel tank was mysteriously full. The trucker himself was never seen again. The local police shrugged it off, blaming exhaustion or some accident out in the woods, but the old-timers who'd heard the stories didn't buy it. "That damned station's still out there," they would say with knowing looks. To this day, travelers claim that if you take Route 6 at night, the gas station will still appear, a beacon for the lost or unlucky. Some say they see someone standing at the pumps, a tall man in a torn jacket and faded cap. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, he just watches. Others hear it, the tapping on their windows when they try to sleep, or laughter coming through the crackle of a radio. The legends claim the station isn't a place at all, it's a doorway, something not of this world that waits patiently for travelers to make the mistake of stopping. And if you stop, they say you're never truly alone again. There's a warning that folks pass around at diners near Route 6. If you see the station, drive on by, don't look back, and never stop. Years after the disappearance of Nathan Banks and countless other missing persons, an urban explorer named Kelly Ramirez set out to prove the legends about Route 6 were just campfire stories. She'd seen the Reddit threads, watched shaky YouTube videos of half-glimpsed lights, and heard whispers about the gas station that wasn't supposed to be there. Kelly was sure it was all a prank, a long-standing hoax crafted by locals with nothing better to do. Armed with a camera, a journal, and a gas can for emergencies, she left her apartment at sunset. Kelly live-streamed updates as she drove, her audience watching eagerly. "All right, guys," she said into the lens, her face glowing in the dashboard light. "We're heading to the infamous gas station of Route 6. For anyone new, this station supposedly appears randomly, like something out of Silent Hill. People go missing, creepy voices, all that stuff. So, let's go see for ourselves." Her chat flooded with jokes and nervous laughter. "Fake station hype," one person wrote. Another sent a series of laughing emojis. Kelly laughed too, until she saw it. It was almost midnight when the red lights appeared through the fog. flickering faintly on the horizon. Kelly's laugh died on her lips. "Whoa, wait, that wasn't there a second ago," she whispered, slowing the car. Her live stream pinged with messages. "What's that, a truck stop? Looks staged. You set this up?" Kelly, turn around. Seriously." The station sat exactly as described, a crumbling old building with ancient pumps and flickering neon lights that read "Gas open 24 hours." There were no cars in the lot, no signs of life, just silence. Kelly swallowed hard, holding her phone up to capture the scene. This has got to be some really elaborate setup. She parked the car, her engine rumbling softly against the stillness. For several moments, she just sat there, staring at the building. Don't stop. The thought crept into her mind, uninvited and urgent. Stupid, she muttered, shaking it off. No turning back now. Grabbing her flashlight and journal, Kelly stepped into the lot. Stream log, 12:04 a.m. The camera shook slightly as Kelly approached one of the gas pumps. The low electric hum of the station's sign buzzed audibly. "Okay, guys," she whispered. "I'm at the pump. It looks really old, like 1950s maybe. I'll post stills later, but this place is insane." Her flashlight swept across the gravel lot, then over the convenience store. The door to the building hung slightly open, creaking softly as it moved. The chat exploded. "Nope. Don't go in. Fake or not, this is messed up. Turn back now." Kelly rolled her eyes and grinned nervously. "You guys are acting like we're in a horror movie. I'm fine. It's just a creepy gas station shit." She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Inside, the air was colder, stale. Dust motes floated in her flashlight beam. Rows of dusty shelves stood empty, save for a few moldy snack bags and discolored cans. Something crunched beneath her boot. She looked down and found what remained of a smartphone, its screen shattered but still lit. The faint glow of the lock screen showed 12:06 a.m., the same time as now. Kelly froze. "Whose phone is this?" she mumbled. Slowly, her flashlight swept toward the counter where a small bell sat. Sitting next to it was a single handwritten note in faint, spidery letters. "Don't stop. Don't let them see you." A muffled tap echoed from somewhere deeper in the store. Kelly jerked her light toward the source of the noise. Her chat buzzed with panic. "What was that? I swear someone's there. Stop playing around." Kelly, run. Kelly turned the stream onto herself, forcing a weak smile. "You guys are overreacting. Probably raccoons or something." Tap, tap, tap. It was louder now, closer. She turned off her stream moments later, cutting the connection for good. In her final journal entry, found 2 days after her disappearance, Kelly described everything. "Something's here with me. It's watching. Moving closer every time I blink. They have faces that aren't faces. Wide grins. Oh God, the grins. They're at the windows, tapping. They're whispering, calling my name. I should never have stopped. It's too late for me now. If anyone finds this, don't look for the station. Don't stop." The last page was smeared with dirt and blood. To this day, Kelly Ramirez remains missing. Her car was found near Route 6 with the doors wide open and headlights still on. On the passenger seat sat her shattered phone, buzzing with one last, unread message. "Did you think you could leave?" And late at night, travelers on Route 6 still tell the story. If you see a gas station on a quiet road, broken lights flickering red, shadows behind the glass, drive on. Don't stop, and don't look back. Because not everyone who stops gets to leave.